The ideas expressed in City Club forums are those of the speakers and not of the City Club of Cleveland, IdeaStream Public Media, or their sponsors. Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, where we are devoted to creating conversations of consequence that helps democracy thrive. It's Friday, December 5th, and I'm Cynthia Connolly, Director of Programming here at the City Club, and so pleased to introduce today's forum featuring U.S. Congressman Greg Landsman. Congressman Landsman represents the 1st District of Ohio, which includes the city of Cincinnati, Warren County, and borders the state of Kentucky. He is widely known for his work in child and family advocacy and bipartisan legislative efforts that support veterans, housing affordability, public safety, and more. Just 2 weeks ago, Congressman Landsman announced the Great American Comeback Plan. It's a plan that aims to revitalize the American dream and unite the country around shared values of fairness, opportunity, democracy, and hard work. It comes as no surprise that this plan is born in Ohio's 1st District, which is home to one of the state's most diverse populations in terms of race, income, economic activity, and yes, political dynamics. And we will hear more about this plan here shortly, including the transformative bills the Congressman is proposing for the Great American Comeback and what it takes to get the job done. Before joining the U.S. House of Representatives in 2023, the Congressman served on the Cincinnati City Council for 5 years, where he led investments in public safety and core services. He also served as the Director of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives under former Ohio Governor Ted Strickland. He currently serves on the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, including the Subcommittee on Health, Subcommittee on Communications and Technology, and the Subcommittee on Environment. Before we begin, a quick reminder for our live stream and radio audience on IdeaStream Public Media. If you have a question for the Congressman during the Q&A portion of the forum, you can text it to 330-541-5794. Again, that's 330-541-5794, and City Club staff will try to work it into the second half of the program. Now, members and friends of the City Club of Cleveland, please join me with a warm welcome for Congressman Greg Landsman.
That was very sweet, thank you. Well, good afternoon. Cynthia, thank you so much for that. And to the Cincinnati, or the Cleveland, to the Cleveland City Club, thank you for hosting, having me, and including me in what is this remarkable history. And it's such an honor. Thank you all for being here, and for those watching at home, thank you. I have been a member of Congress for only a few years, but I am convinced that the biggest issue we face in this country is that power and wealth has been concentrated so unprecedentedly and so dangerously at the top. And the big issues that we face in this country stem from this. The extreme concentration of wealth and power has given a small group of super elites, and think Elon Musk and these tech billionaires, the super wealthy. The president has made, by some reports, something like several $billion made over the course of the first 10 months, 11 months of his presidency. Half of his cabinet. They're making a lot of the big decisions. Arguably, they're making most of the big decisions. And there's a disconnect between them and us. They're no longer connected to us the same way others were. If they did really well, they still stayed in the community. They were still part of who we are, and they shared our values, and they knew who we were. They cared about us. And that's still true for some folks, but it's increasingly true that a lot of folks at the top who have billions and billions of dollars don't know us. They don't care about us. So the decisions they're making, they benefit themselves at the expense of us. And this is a crisis. It has gotten worse, arguably, over the last 10, 12 months. But to be clear, these problems of extreme wealth and political concentration have been building for decades. And here's the problem. All that wealth and power comes from somewhere. It's come from us. It's come from you. It's come from the folks that I represent back home. And the reality now is that the American dream is out of reach for the vast majority of Americans. The very promise of America is diminishing in such a severe and rapid way. This is a moment of reckoning. Now, I came of age when the American dream was very much a reality. And when our politics, while not perfect, was still productive. I grew up in a traditional American middle-class household. My parents were teachers. They worked hard. They didn't have a ton of money. They didn't want for much, but they could buy a house. And they could pay for their children's education. And they could retire with dignity. When I started paying attention to politics in the 90s, most Americans seemed to believe in our shared values, including those folks at the top. Liberty and opportunity, equality, fairness, truth and democracy, justice, the rule of law, and that hard work pays off. We had leaders who we respected, some of whom we revered, people who worked together across party lines, and sometimes did very, very big things for the country rather than just for themselves. But we've lost a lot of that. And I'm determined to be part of a generation of leaders that helps the country find its way back to these values, and to achieve something infinitely better than the current unacceptable status quo. So I'm here today to talk about what I'm calling the Great American Comeback. I recently released this path forward for America, a unifying plan, much needed shared purpose to fix what's broken in our economy and to reclaim our wealth and power. The plan is rooted in American history, in the history of great American comebacks, in meeting moments of crisis and reckoning with courage and fight, and a desire to build something infinitely better. This is what makes our country so special. When things get bad, we do fight back. So let's start at the beginning. For over a decade between independence and the signing of the Constitution, America really struggled under Articles of Confederation. We were weak and vulnerable and in economic disarray. And then this great American comeback, the Constitution, asserting our freedoms, directing the government to pursue justice and secure the blessings of liberty for everyone. Now, 80 years later, a divided country, the horrors of slavery, and a civil war that almost ripped the country in two. But then, a great American comeback. We abolished slavery, established due process, expanded the right to vote, unified the country, and set off the greatest expansion of economic might the world had ever known. 60 years later, a Great Depression, a world war, threatening the very existence of this country from two sides of the globe. And then a great American comeback, the triumph of the greatest generation over the greatest threat to democracy and sovereignty the world has ever known. Today, 70 years later, we're facing another moment of crisis and reckoning. the people, the place, and the promise of America are imperiled. Imperiled by attacks on our democracy, partisan gerrymandering, voter suppression, dark money, big money, corruption, intentionally diminishing the power of American voters. When you take that power from voters, where does it go? It goes up. Our country is imperiled by an affordability crisis. People are working harder than ever, but it's not paying off. It doesn't allow them to buy a home or pay for their children's education or to retire with dignity. Imperiled by a public safety crisis, the fear of gun violence, the crushing weight of assassinations, school shootings, every life cut short, with no real national effort to keep people safe. And imperiled by a crisis of international and national security. We're antagonizing our allies and appeasing and empowering our enemies. But we are Americans, and the time has come for our great American comeback. So where do we start? Always leadership. We need a dedicated crew of leaders. Leaders who will lift us up, not tear us down. Leaders who will bring us together, not divide us. Leaders that reject the failed rhetoric and policies of political extremism. Leaders who will listen and learn, rather than making people feel ignored, dismissed, and looked down upon. Leaders who will take on our broken systems and upend the status quo. Leaders who will bring us back to normal so that we can get big things done again. Leaders who love this country and have the energy and the toughness and the courage and the common sense to take on the super elite who have rigged our economic and political systems again for themselves, not for us. Leaders who reject chaos, corruption, and cruelty. To build our comeback, we also need a governing plan, laying out our shared vision for the country. We should start with a pledge to America, a blueprint similar to the Contract for America in 1994. Our pledge, though, would be built on 10 concrete and unifying bills that will fix what's broken in our country. Again, not the things that have transpired just in the last 10 to 12 months, but what's been broken for decades. I lay out these 10 bills in detail in the Great American Comeback. Take 3 of the bills, for example, each responding to some of the greatest challenges facing our country. First, we have to fix our politics and our democracy and organize with the singular goal of returning power back to people. The Democracy for the People Act would ban dark money, would end voter suppression, would eliminate partisan gerrymandering once and for all. The Fix Our Government Act would ban stock trading in Congress, establish term limits, improve government services, implement reforms that actually get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse and corruption of all kinds. Next, we have to fix our economy and our tax code and reinvigorate the American dream. The current tax code is broken, and it's been broken for a long time. This year, Republicans in Congress passed a bill that guts health care to pay for a massive tax cut for the super wealthy, amounting to the largest transfer of wealth from working folks to the richest Americans in our country's history. This was not only incredibly cruel, it worsened the existing crisis in our country. More wealth and power stuck at the top. And remember, the power and wealth came from somewhere, came from you. The Reward Hard Work Act would fix our broken economy and overhaul our tax code, requiring the super wealthy to pay all their taxes just like all of us. I always ask every audience to raise their hand if you pay all your taxes. Do you pay all? Raise your hand if you pay all your taxes. Yeah, that's all we're asking for. It would set up a tax code that focused on hard work. At the heart of this bill are affordability tax cuts. Fully paid for, refundable tax breaks for working families, paid out monthly, so that families can deal with the high cost of living, to help them pay for housing and health care, food, and other basic expenses. It would also end the trade wars, immediately lowering costs. The next 7 bills tackle housing, pursuing the largest federal investment in housing and infrastructure ever, getting America building again, health care, reversing the health care cuts, establishing a public option, expanding coverage and lowering costs, public safety, hiring new cops with new laws to keep weapons out of the hands of violent people. Education, finally investing in early childhood education, investing in teachers and classrooms and the trades, real border and immigration reform, a bill protecting civil rights and codifying personal freedoms, and finally, a bill to strengthen our national security and global leadership by investing in our allies and taking head-on our foes and the enemies of freedom. Together, these 10 bills provide us with a foundation to build a coordinated national movement to rally the public and meet the moment. This is a common sense plan to win back Americans and to lead our great American comeback. There's a reason I decided to take this on. Not only do I believe in it, and I believe in our country, but my own experience in politics gives me the reason to believe that the great American comeback is possible. It's not inevitable, but it's possible. Years ago, when our kids were in preschool, they're now 14 and 15. So we're raising teenagers. Maybe this is why I'm dove headfirst into something so complicated. But the kids were in preschool. You could tell what a huge difference it made. And I set out with others to make Cincinnati the first city in the country to provide 2 years of quality preschool for every kid. It took us years of organizing, and it required us to take on the political elite. But we got it on the ballot, and it passed. And it passed by the largest margin of victory in the school district's history. And now we're the only city in the country to provide 2 years of quality preschool. It's changed the lives of tens of thousands of children. My first year in Congress, we took on the Speaker of the House and forced a vote on what's called the Social Security Fairness Act. This is for our retired teachers and police officers and firefighters and letter carriers. They spent their entire careers serving us. But before they served or during their service or after, they worked in the private sector and they earned money in the private sector and they paid into Social Security, and Congress had for 25 years told them they can't have that money. I thought it was insane. $20 billion a year being stolen from our retired teachers and police officers and firefighters. There were 360 members of Congress who had told their constituents by signing on to the bill that they were with them, but the bill hadn't moved. So we forced a discharge petition. They're now famous, right, because of the Epstein files, but they are a tool to allow those of us who have been fed up with the way in which Congress is being led to say, we want to vote. This is a democracy. We want to vote. And in 2 days, we had 218 signatures to force a vote on the Social Security Fairness Act. And it passed. Now, millions of retired teachers, police officers, firefighters, and letter carriers receive every single dollar that they earned, that they paid for in Social Security benefits. And again, that's $20 billion a year. $20 billion a year now going back out to you, returning wealth and power back to you. It has made a huge difference for folks. The point is, when you believe in something, you bring people together, you refuse to give up, you can make big things happen. It's been true for me, and it's been true for our country. And I believe it will be true for this great American comeback. In 1942, in the middle of the Second World War, widespread anxiety and fear, playwright Thornton Wilder warned, "Living is struggle. Every good and excellent thing in the world stands moment by moment on the razor's edge of danger and must be fought for, whether it's a field or a home or a country. This country is a good and excellent thing, and we have to fight for it. Fight for what makes America America, for our shared values of freedom and democracy, hard work, fairness, opportunity, community, and caring for one another. The fact is, this country belongs to all of us, not just them. The country belongs to all of us. And the Great American Comeback is our way to remind all Americans of that fact. As bad as things are, this is our moment. And we must meet this moment with the kind of purpose and heart and focus that generations of Americans before us had when they fought back. We won't give up on this place, the people, the promise of America. And this gives us something to believe in, to hold on to work together on. The shared purpose that so many of us desperately need. It's always what we do together that matters most. And together, we will lead our great American comeback. Thank you all. God bless you all. And may God continue to bless the United States of America.
All right, we are about to begin the audience Q&A. For those just joining via our live stream or live radio broadcast on IdeaStream Public Media 89.7, I'm Cynthia Connolly, Director of Programming here at the City Club. Today we are joined by Congressman Greg Landsman, representing Ohio's 1st District, which is the Cincinnati area, and we're learning all about his recently announced Great American Comeback Plan. We welcome questions from everybody, City Club members, guests, and those joining via our live stream or radio broadcast, again at 89.7. If you'd like to text a question, please text it to 330-541-5794. One more time for our radio audience, that's 330-541-5794, and our City Club staff will try to work it into the program. May we have our first question, please?
Congressman, you touched on education a little bit, and you're well known for your work with Strive in Cincinnati and elsewhere. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came together and what you learned and how it spread, beyond Cincinnati?
Sure. So the Strive Partnership was an effort where folks from the community came together. They looked at the set of outcomes that the system, collectively, we were achieving or not achieving for our young people, and said, we've got to do better, and the only way to do better is to build a better system, right? There are programs that help, but as one person said, we're program rich, but system poor. So let's build a better system. And the way it worked was, these leaders of the early childhood education community came together with superintendents and K-12 leadership, with the higher ed and career training folks, and they mapped out the trajectory from birth, really prenatally, when brain development begins, to graduating from college or career training. And they realized that they needed to invest better together. And the way to do that was to take on a few shared outcomes that they would all work on together. And they chose school readiness rates so that they could invest in the things that were working to improve access to prenatal care and giving folks time to be home with their children, childcare, preschool, all the things that would help a child get ready for school when 90% of brain development has occurred. And then early grade level reading, third grade reading. Third grade reading being a way of really sort of entering into the next chapter of education. If you can read, by the time you finish third grade, you can then go and learn. If you can't, you got to still get caught up. And I think we need a national effort, by the way, and this is in the education bill, to get every kid caught up from COVID and any number of other things, meaning we would invest in way more time for teachers and students to be together so that we can get every single child caught up. College, high school graduation, college graduation, all those things. And then over the course of time, they invested in the things that they knew were working. We did a lot of data work to see what was having the most impact on moving school readiness rates, third grade reading scores, high school graduation rates. And it was one of the reasons why we took on the Preschool Promise. For me, it was personal because my two kids were going through it, and I saw how transformative it was. But I was also in a position to help lead it because I was working for an organization that had the data and had the, the impetus, maybe even the requirement to go lead on it. We knew that 2 years of quality preschool was a game changer in terms of school readiness scores. I saw it as a parent. And so that was one of the reasons why we were able to sort of win that battle, to get it on the ballot and ultimately get it passed. It was because we had sort of built this infrastructure and group of folks that really believed in investing in things that work to improve outcomes for children. And people all over the country started to see this as a way of doing business differently, organizing differently. And it still works. The idea works anywhere. If you're trying to tackle something really big, you got to appreciate that the system is designed to produce the outcomes that you're getting. So that's, the system is produced, this nice transition, segue back to the Great American Comeback. What's at the heart of what we have to change is the current system. The current system is designed to move more and more money and wealth upstream. That is what's happening. That's why you're seeing such an enormous concentration of wealth, because the system is designed that way. And so you have to redesign the system to make sure that people, who work really hard and make a ton of money, that's great. But they've got to participate in the same sort of tax system as the rest of us. And we have to make sure that, wealth and power stays with everyday Americans, because that's how you have ultimately justice and the American dream, but also it's the best way to have an incredible economy. You can't have an incredible economy if all of your spending is up here and everyone here is, barely able to pay their bills. That's not a robust economy. That's a dying economy. That's an economy that's being kept afloat a little bit, by the spending at the top. But I don't know, for those of you over the holidays, if you did any shopping, how many of you went Black Friday shopping? No one? You did. We did. But most Americans stayed away this year. The vast majority of people said to folks that asked, yeah, we don't have that kind of cash. That money is somewhere else.
All right, our next question is a text question that I'll read. As an autism specialist, I'm very interested in helping Ohio discern and uphold best practice autism interventions. Given your advocacy and support of families, and as a member of the Subcommittee on Health, can you share information you may have of any new initiatives to improve autism standards of care in our state or country?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for your advocacy and work. I think there is a growing interest, and this remains a bipartisan issue. So my hope is that this Congress will take up any number of pieces of legislation that would improve our work around autism and helping kids, adults who struggle with autism. And I'm glad that we got the question. I would love to work with this person. So if you're listening, or if you're still listening, please reach out to our office. We'd love to connect you to. There's a couple bills, and the issue And I'm going to see if I can transition every question back to the Great American Comeback. But the issue here is that we will pass a bill, or we'll work on something in a bipartisan way in committee. Okay, like the members. And we did it this week. We marked up past several bills. Some were more important than the others. One had to do with shower heads, but you know. It was a big debate about the shower head and water pressure. In any event, but there were, I had a bill that got marked up this week that we passed, a bill that would help get broadband out to more places more quickly, less expensively, by requiring the railroad companies. When you're trying to lay broadband, you got to go over railroad tracks, and the railroad companies use this as even though it's like 30 feet, they use it as an opportunity to like really go after these companies. These broadband companies, they delay the projects, they throw all these fees. And so our bill just said, you can't do that anymore. Like the 30 feet, that's the public right of way, right? So if they're laying broadband, they get to just go do it. They have to coordinate with you. We got to make sure people are safe, but they get to go and lay the broadband, and it will help speed up, no pun intended, broadband all over the country. We marked that up. Now, here's the problem. There was something like 700 bills in the last Congress that got marked up, passed out of committee, most of which were bipartisan, and never made it to the floor for a vote. And then if you do get a vote in the House, the Senate doesn't take it up. It's broken. It's broken because the group of us, the majority of us, haven't taken our power back. We're starting to. I did with the discharge petition on the Social Security Fairness Act. I'm going to do it again with a discharge petition suspending members' pay during a shutdown. The idea that members get paid during a shutdown is insane. But the Speaker's not going to put that on the floor. So the issue is that we'll pass some autism-related bills, and it doesn't go anywhere because a small number of people are making all the decisions. The Speaker, who really does follow the direction of the president, and the majority leader. And it used to at least include the committee chairs and the ranking members. But this is what I mean by getting our power back, and part of that is the money. There's just so much money that flows into leadership. And then that money goes to individual members, and people sort of just follow that system, even though it is completely and utterly broken.
Hi, Congressman, and thank you so much
Greg.
Greg. Yeah. And thanks so much for your Great America Comeback plan. For so long, I believe there has been an outcry for the Democratic Party to have a plan. I have two questions related to that. What is the possibility, chance, reality of the Democratic Party taking on this plan as their plan? And would really like to know what you're hearing when you go home to your constituents about, I've heard the term, the worm is turning, that things are changing now, that possibly there are leaks in the grip that the president has on the country and the politics. Yeah. And just wondering if you're hearing that is happening, and then what are the chances of the Democratic Party taking this great plan over as their plan?
The chances go up every time one of you tweets about it or posts about it, so feel free to share it. And it really is a plan for the country. I mean, I understand that, you know, I'm a Democrat, and so my hope is that my own caucus says this is the way to go. I believe it's a unifying plan for the country, and I think for independents and a lot of Republicans, they're looking for something similar. And my hope is that, yes, it will be something that my colleagues get into. You know, I have shared it with them. I worked on it with them. I've got nothing but positive feedback. A member of leadership, I was walking to committee yesterday or the day before, and a member of leadership just shouted out, "The Great American Comeback," down the hallway. So I was like, you know, that's good. So, you know, you got to put it out there. Keep building on it every time we put, this is our second edition of it, there'll be a third and a fourth, and it will include feedback from everyone. So you can go online to wherever it's sitting and offer feedback, and we're sort of building it, you know, with the country. In terms of the feedback back at home, yes, people are fed up. This may have been this sort of thing that, you know, the last 10 to 12 months, as I said, like the problems we've been facing have been, you know, issues building for decades. But I think the chaos and the level of corruption and cruelty of the last 10 to 12 months really has gotten to people. And there is an anger. There's a sense of betrayal. You know, I've got a lot of farmers in my district who are really struggling. The tariffs have hurt them more than probably anyone else. I mean, they're like small businesses in the sense that they can't absorb that kind of price increase. But for farmers, it's twofold. You know, the number of markets where they can sell their grain or what, you know, has shrunk because of the tariffs and the trade war aspect of this. And then on top of the fact that, you know, they have fewer places to sell, and that means that the price of what they're selling goes down, the cost is going up for fuel and fertilizer. All of the inputs have gone up. Last year there was a big drought, so they took on a loan. This is where it gets very grim. Most farmers took on some debt, and that's not something they do lightly. And now they have to pay that back in the middle of this economic mess, and they are terrified. And these are fourth, fifth generation farmers who, for the first time, are looking at whether or not they're going to survive. So they're mad. And there are small businesses who are mad. There are families who are mad. I mean, everyone is frustrated. I will tell you, though, it does not translate into, well, now we're all going to become Democrats or whatever. It's immediately funny, right? Because the distrust in both political parties is it's got to be at a historic high. There's just people are mad. They're frustrated with the elites. And I'm one of those people. I'm frustrated. I'm mad. I get so irritated at seeing, you know, really good people making really silly decisions because that's where the herd is going. So they are frustrated, but they are looking not just for, you know, a party, but they're looking for a kind of leader, somebody who's very much a part of their lives.
When the government shutdown took place, the Republicans stayed united, and the Democrats, including you, gave in and got the government back started without getting any results out of it. So for 6 weeks or 5 weeks, it was a destructive move that came back to haunt us. How come the Republicans are able to unite? And if you go back to the first term, they wouldn't let a Democratic elect president to appoint a Supreme Court justice. And we can't seem to even do any minimal amount of work as a group because we can't stay united.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't one of the people who backed down. But there were some that did. And I think they did frustratingly, because it was frustrating for a lot of us who stayed pretty dug in on the healthcare fight. The healthcare fight is the big one for me. That's why I joined Energy and Commerce and sit on the Health Committee. The healthcare crisis is very real, and I'll come back to that, but I want to answer your question. It's not unity, I wouldn't say. It looks like unity. It looks like and yes, you could say that it's a kind of unity, but it is people who are very angry within the Republican conference. They're very frustrated. You're starting to see a lot of that. They're feeling a little bit more emboldened to take on their leaders after the election a couple weeks ago. But it's more sort of a loyalty, a fealty. I mean, they really are sort of following the leader because they believe that person has all this power. But once they start to see that power is diminishing, which you're starting to see, I think you'll see more and more of them breaking out. It won't be fast enough. It won't be sufficient in terms of the accountability we need, the pushback that we need. But for us, the argument was, look, we want to resolve this issue of the healthcare crisis that our constituents are facing, that their constituents are facing. I've got 32,000 people in my district that rely on the Affordable Care Act subsidies. So I wasn't gonna back down. I was just at a press conference with a group of Republicans and Democrats because we put forward yesterday a plan that would get 300 votes in the House, over 60 votes in the Senate, a 2-year extension of the Affordable Care Act subsidies with some reforms. We just need the vote. We need the bill. we needed the bill on the floor. And one of the Republicans from Florida said she had 130,000 constituents that rely on the Affordable Care Act subsidy. I mean, it's just remarkable. I have 32,000. That's a lot. Almost a third of her district is on the Affordable Care Act, and they receive these subsidies. We assumed, based on history, that when you offer a clear pathway out of a situation like that, if you say, look, if you want our votes, you've got to work with us on resolving this healthcare crisis. Obviously, we're not going to get everything we want. We want you to reverse all of the cuts to Medicaid. It's $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid. We want you to extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies. And the assumption was that the President of the United States, like every other president, would get involved and would negotiate. And the negotiations weren't complicated. And they had one meeting, and that meeting was historic in the sense that it almost went the right way. So by all accounts, just imagine it's in the Oval Office. You've got Schumer, Schumer, Hakeem, Jeffries, John Thune, the Speaker. I think J.D. Vance came in at one point, popped in. Anyway, and Hakeem said, look, these Affordable Care Act subsidies, 22 million Americans. It's a big deal. And we got to extend them, at least for a year or two. And the president was immediately interested. And had that just been the trajectory, it would have all been done. We would have gotten a deal before the shutdown. But as the president was asking questions about how these Affordable Care Act subsidies work, he's very intrigued. The Speaker said, Mr. President, we can't do that. We don't have the votes. And we can't be worrying about, he said, we can't be worrying about something, I can't remember the word, but it was something like not significant, something so insignificant, so arbitrary, as if healthcare was arbitrary. Can you imagine anything being less arbitrary than healthcare? So the assumption was that they would negotiate like every other time, and they just never did. In fact, the Speaker of the House shut the House of Representatives down for 6 weeks. That is insane, meaning that you couldn't walk onto the floor. And so 6 weeks later, there were, 6 senators? 6 or 8 senators? Who decided enough's enough, they're not going to negotiate. And they, tried after 60 votes. something like that, some ridiculous amount of votes. They decided that it was time. My worry is that we're going to end up right back where we were, and at the end of January in the next couple of weeks. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm going to force a discharge petition on the pay issue is to remind these members not to screw around with the shutdown if they don't get paid. Like, they need to sign this discharge petition. Like, they need to appreciate that the American people hate the fact that during a shutdown, that the only people that get paid are members of Congress. I suspended my pay, but we are more unified. There were 8 that felt like, when it comes to food assistance and air travel, we can't keep this guy is willing to make as many people hurt as humanly possible in order to win this political fight. And they made a decision to end that pain, and I understand that. I do. I didn't vote that way, but I do understand why they did it. And I think the key is to get this ACA resolution done now. And what we proposed yesterday would do that, and it would avoid another shutdown. But in terms of us being unified around healthcare, there's about as, and then I'll transition this one back to the Great American Comeback so that I'm 3 for 3, but we had something to work on for the first time. We were working on a resolution to the healthcare crisis that they had created. $1 trillion cut to Medicaid, the ACA subsidies expiring, and we still have that. I mean, that's what we're working on now, and so you're starting to see a more unified, collaborative caucus. And I think what you're going to see is the opposite on the other side, that sort of hanging on to the almighty, all-powerful Trump is starting to, you're starting to see people slowly, and not in big numbers, but you are starting to see people let go.
We're standing in the middle of Playhouse Square, so we really appreciate your reference to the great playwright Thornton Wilder here in our town. We appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
My question is, can you talk about how Ohio is informing your Great American Comeback? As a mostly red state with a lot of blue urban hubs, do you think that the Buckeye State as a whole can find a common denominator, as you found with Strive? So is there a great Ohio comeback in the midst of the Great American
Yeah, I mean, look, Ohio is more purple than red, in my opinion. And I think you'll see that in this election with Sherrod. But it'll be very close. I think he'll win, but that's not what we're here to talk about. But it'll be close, meaning that it's still very purple. And the same is true for the governor's race. I think you'll see a very close governor's race. So the point is that I think Ohio is still very much a bellwether, interesting state to look at when it comes to where the country is. Now, why does it feel different? Partisan gerrymandering. The reason why things got really out of control here, and there's a supermajority in the legislature for Republicans, is because of partisan gerrymandering. They drew the map to increase their numbers, and in almost like 95, 96% of the time, whatever the politicians did with the maps, that's what happened. So the politicians in this state decided elections, and they decided those elections for the last decade or more. And as a result, they took the congressional representation, which was pretty even, and they went from 10 to 5, and then in the most recent redistricting, partisan gerrymandering, they are desperately trying to go from 10 to 5 to 12 to 3. Now that didn't mean the voters changed. It's just they changed the map. Politicians are deciding. I mean, how undemocratic and awful is that? It's also ground zero for voter suppression. Ohio has this absurd driver's license law. I mean, I don't think people realize that a lot of people don't have a driver's license, or it's expired, or the name on your driver's license is different because you got married, or you go to vote and you forgot your driver's license. Either way, that plus purging, just purging hundreds of thousands of voters. And they're a specific kind of voters. They're predominantly black voters. And the driver's license stuff it has nothing to do with folks who are here undocumented. Undocumented people aren't trying to register to vote. They're not trying to vote. They're not trying to get, expelled. It mostly hurts black voters, Latino voters. Those are not their voters. So between voter suppression and partisan gerrymandering, we now have a legislature that represents about 30% of Ohio. And they are in the majority. And nothing will happen to them until you end partisan gerrymandering. So part of the Great American Comeback is the Democracy for America, for the People Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which would end partisan gerrymandering and ban dark money and end voter suppression. In Ohio, the Great American Comeback is a constitutional amendment to end partisan gerrymandering in the state. And that's just fair. And that means that voters decide. And some of them will pick Republicans, and some of them will pick Democrats, and maybe some of them will pick somebody else. But they get to decide. Because the map was built by an independent commission. I mean, think about this at this point. Like, you could just throw the Ohio map in ChatGPT and say, give me a fair map. And ChatGPT would be like, here you go.
Cuyahoga County has been plagued with the opioid crisis for almost a decade or more. And there's a lot of barriers to treatment, to addiction treatment, as well as non-opioid treatment for pain. Can you talk about some of the work that you're doing on accessing care?
So thank you very much. I've got a bill that would require the VA to offer to their patients the non-addictive, FDA-approved pain relief options. The fact that it requires an act of Congress to get the VA, a public entity, to say, in addition to these addictive, possibly dangerous pain relief options, we are going to also give you a list of non-addictive options. And, that bill will be one of these bills. Sorry. It's going to be one of these bills that will pass out of committee. It will pass out of Veterans Affairs. I'm surprised they haven't taken it up yet. We had a meeting on it yesterday, and I thought they had marked it up already. But it will just sit there. And it is incredibly frustrating because that's like day one stuff. I mean, it'll get 400 votes in the House. Just put it on the floor. We sit there for 4 days. We sit there for 3 to 4 days, and we'll vote 5 times on 8 bills. I mean, can you imagine if that was that was considered success? That kind of productivity. In any event, that to me is part of the answer. Is you have to flood the market with these new FDA-approved non-addictive pain relief options. And, some of that will happen naturally. Some of that will require us to act. No, okay. That was quick.
That hour goes fast. Thank you once again to Congressman Landsman, or Greg, for joining us at the City Club today. Forums like this one are made possible thanks to generous support from individuals like you. You can learn more about how to become a guardian of free speech at cityclub.org. The City Club would also like to welcome guests at the tables hosted by G2G Consulting. Thank you so much for being here today. And coming up at the City Club on Wednesday, December 10th, we will be joined by Valerie Mayen, founder and director of Yellow Cake Shop Clothing. She will be talking about her entrepreneurship journey and what it takes to build a fashion brand outside the runway capitals. The City of Cleveland's Senior Advisor of Arts and Culture, Rhonda Brown, will moderate. Then on Friday, December 12th, we will talk all about AI in education, and in this instance, how leaders can explore its role in accelerating innovation across learning environments and how to design a school of the future. You can learn more about these forums and others and get your tickets at cityclub.org. Thank you once again to Greg and to our members and friends of the City Club. I'm Cynthia Connolly, and this forum is adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
The ideas expressed in City Club forums are those of the speakers and not of the City Club of Cleveland, IdeaStream Public Media, or their sponsors. Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.